The Eighth Amendment is a very important amendment that was written by our founders for a reason. You're not supposed to be like the Count of Monte Cristo and locked away. Look at that. 90% of the people are dying in front of you, starving to death. It's horrific.
The thing that I'm happiest about is our REACH program, where in our inaugural year, we went into 6 schools and we touched 150 children. We're now up to 20 schools.
The noxious odor in Fulton County continues, not going away without a fight. Fani Willis won her re-election. Now she's saying she's going to continue to prosecute Trump, but she's in some hot water because the DOJ also came out and telling us that the folks in Fulton County and the Fulton County Jail are violating the Constitution and federal law. Fulton County, obviously a disaster. Fani is the district attorney. She prosecutes a bunch of people there, sends them into these jails, should be responsible for ensuring that there aren't other crimes being committed in those jails over which she has jurisdiction, and not allowing the Constitution and federal law to be violated. And Fani is very busy focusing on prosecuting Trump. So we'll go through her latest interview and hear how this is explained by her and her office. But the report from Atlanta News says she's moving ahead with charges against President Trump. The biggest Fani in Georgia is not going away easily. We'll see what happens because the case is on appeal. But she says in her second term, after winning, says, I think they see our no-nonsense, tough approach on violent criminals. Says it's a referendum. They want me to continue to do the work. Fulton County has one thing that they want. It's more big Fani. So she's done a bunch of terrible things there, including prosecuting the Young Thug case in a disaster fashion, but she's proud of it. And even more consequential will be her prosecution of Trump. Said these cases become murkier, but there's no exception, and she's going to continue to move forward. As for what Willis plans to do, she didn't give us a solid answer, but she talks about patience. But here's the report from the DOJ. Fani's jail is a disaster. The county jail violates the 8th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. Cruel and unusual punishment. And she's sending people in there repeatedly. Merrick Garland's even coming out and talking about it. Merrick Garland said LaShawn Thompson's horrific death was symptomatic of a pattern of dangerous and dehumanizing conditions of the Fulton County Jail, said Merrick Garland. Wow. The Justice Department report concludes that Fulton County and the Sheriff's Office allowed unsafe and unsanitary conditions at the jail. As a result, people incarcerated suffered harms from pest infestation, malnourishment. They were put at substantial risks of harm. There were homicides, stabbings, sexual abuse. These are unconstitutional, unlawful conditions in Fulton County, and they're going to work to remedy these things. We cannot turn a blind eye to this. Maybe Fani should pay some attention to her own backyard before she wastes all of her time and taxpayer dollars on prosecuting Trump and then sleeping with her staff, which is called Nathan Wade, indicting each other repeatedly. So this is the report that shows how horrific this was from the Department of Justice, the Civil Rights Division, focusing on the Northern District of Georgia, the investigation of the Fulton County Jail. They say in 2022, September, LaShawn Thompson died alone in a filthy cell in the mental health unit of Fulton County. He had a history of mental illness, was unhoused, was accused at spitting at a police officer, arrested on a simple battery charge, and was held on an old warrant. 3 months after his arrest, he was slumped over with his head in the toilet, malnourished, body was infested with an enormous presence of body lice, and they concluded that he was neglected to death. The guy died in his cell, eaten by lice. There was widespread reporting and outrage, but there was another death several months before Thompson's that never made the news. Another unhoused man with serious mental illness was arrested after breaking into a building to try to get warm. On the mental health unit, he stopped taking his medications, health declined. He died after a seizure, was transported to a hospital but never recovered, died in hospice a month later. 2 more people died. Both men had serious mental health needs. One had a developmental disability. Both were killed by their cellmates. Both were found with their feet bound. One of them was wrapped up in bedding like a mummy. Altogether, these 4 black men with serious mental health needs died in jail in the mental health unit in under a year. 4 dead guys. And they were never sentenced to death at all, but they're dead. In July, we opened a civil rights investigation. Within weeks, 6 more black men had died in the jail. Fani's having dead black men drop dead all over the place. One person was found unresponsive. His cellmate strangled him. A day later, tensions erupted. Within 24 hours, 5 units in the jail saw violent assaults. At least 7 people were stabbed. 1 person was killed. After an extensive investigation, we find reasonable cause to believe that Fulton County and Fulton County Sheriff's Office violates the Constitution and the statutory rights of people incarcerated in Fulton County Jail. The 8th Amendment is a very important amendment that was written by our founders for a reason. You're not supposed to be like the Count of Monte Cristo and locked away in the Chateau d'If. Fulton County Jail fails to protect incarcerated people from the substantial risk of serious harm. There's homicide, there's stabbings. Assaults are carried out with weapons that are fashioned from jail fixtures. There's photos of this. The jails had inadequate practice for preventing sexual violence, and the guards use force against incarcerated people. Excessive force, poor policies, poor training, things are not clean, mental health conditions, all sorts of problems. The jail's not providing any special ed services to 17-year-old boys and girls who deserve it. It's a disaster. Now, Georgia, Fulton County has more than 1 million people. It's big. 4 jail buildings, 2% of the jail population, only 2% was serving a criminal sentence. Look at this. Wow. In July of 2024, only 2% of the jail population was serving a criminal sentence. This is incredible. Thus, nearly all of the people held in jail have never been found guilty of anything. We have a presumption of innocence. So 98% of the people are not serving a penalty. They're just being held pending the outcome of their case. They say people spend long periods detained in jail. According to an analysis, nearly a quarter of the population in jail had been in there a year or more. So a year or more pending, not convicted of anything. And this happens a lot, by the way. This is why people talk about having no cash bond. So this does not happen because people are sitting in there, they can't get out, and they're rotting away, getting eaten by lice. We did our own analysis. We identified 245 people who had been in custody for 2 years or more, 14 people who had been in jail for over 5 years, and one who had been there for more than a decade. They say this is a jail in crisis. In the wake of the deaths, people dropping dead, there was a request for more money. There were resignations. People were resigning after that guy died by getting eaten by lice. They opened their investigation July 2023. They released it right after Fani won her re-election again, of course. They didn't want this coming out before the election. So we've got all an explanation of the various complexes, but here's what's happening. They say Fulton County does not adequately protect incarcerated people from risk of violence. They have a duty to make sure that under the 8th Amendment, you're not abused in jail. Your penalty is to serve your time. It's not to get raped, stabbed, and murdered. This jail exposes incarcerated people to extreme violence. There are killings, there are stabbings. In less than 24 hours in August, at least 7 people were stabbed. 1 was killed in August 23. The violence spanned 5 units and 3 floors. It started at 11:30 p.m. Officers discovered that people from one housing zone opened their zone door and went into another zone. The next day, an officer heard screaming coming from the 7th floor. He found 1 incarcerated person with blood on his shoulder, 2nd incarcerated person in a pool of blood on the floor. That person died from multiple stab wounds. The locking mechanism for the doors was broken. While officers tried to secure the scene, incarcerated people kept trying to assault each other. 1 incarcerated person had to be treated for exhaustion. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of stabbing. Wow. Almost simultaneously, a sergeant found another incarcerated man with blood on his face and chest. The victim required medical transport. An officer tased someone else trying to break up a fight, and they were overwhelmed with stretcher calls. Everybody's bleeding all over the place. Tons of people dying. 23-year-old man died, stabbed multiple times. 37-year-old man died, stabbed, assaulted. 34-year-old man died, strangulated. 32-year-old man, mental health unit, cellmate, beat the hell out of him. He had raccoon eyes, great. And the sign of head trauma, perfect. And a 20-year-old man died after being strangled by his cellmate. None of these men should be killed. It's nuts. 33-year-old man died after being stabbed by another incarcerated person. Stab wound between his shoulder and neck and a deep gaping wound above his eyebrow. Insane. This guy says, I had knives put to my throat and I had to call my mom telling them, please wire somebody some money or I'm going to get killed. Nobody should be subject to that at a jail where you're supposed to be waiting to get your day in court. Haven't even been convicted of anything. Presumed innocent. Arrested and prosecuted by corrupt Fani. In 2023, the stabbings was 1.5 times the rate of New York City stabbing jails and 27 times the rate of Miami-Dade. So if you're going to be in jail, go to Miami, okay? Less likely to be stabbed there. Here's the rate of stabbing in various jails. Miami-Dade, not that many stabbings. Good numbers there. New York City jails, moderate. Fulton, you're getting stabbed. It's like, hey, welcome to the Fulton County Jail. You know what we have to do. I just got here. Yeah, but that's how we do things. So here it comes. You ready? Here it comes. We also analyze violence at the jail. It's brutal. And also it's transgenders getting abused. It's bad names, calling people bad names. Also 17-year-olds unprotected from sexual violence. People are getting R'd all over the place. Not good. It's cruel and unusual. If they're allowing this to happen, this is criminal negligence. Long-lasting trauma, and people are beaten and stabbed. Metal plates slammed in his head, threatening him with fire pokers, threatened to transmit cash Cash Apps money and more. They don't do anything to address this. It just kind of continues on. Violence all over the place. We're going to see the physical conditions were also bad. Staffing is terrible. This is the recommended staffing level. They can't hire anybody, so it's total bedlam. And there's poor maintenance, and they get contraband into the facility. Here's what it looks like. During our site visit in one maximum security zone, almost every pipe chase door could not lock, and large pieces of metal easily made into weapons were lying on the floor. The officers escorting us during the site visit appeared unfazed. They didn't even care. Like, oh, those are just knives over there. When one of our expert consultants identified a significant piece of metal found in a pipe chase, an officer said to drop it on the floor of the day room where incarcerated people could easily access it, and that they would get it later. You know, just drop that over there. What? There's a bunch of inmates there. Just a month before that visit, an incarcerated person used a metal pipe and a long sharpened nail in an attack in which 2 people received serious injuries. Unsecured pipe chases in the jail. Yeah, there you go. So they just come in there and just, I guess, unscrew the pipes. Lots of trash. Looks like that might be a pipe, something there, leaned up against the wall. Lots of other metallic objects that you could function into shivs. Like that looks like something right there. So they're grabbing the metal and they're creating weapons. Great. Now, Fulton County Jail reported 2,100 man-made sharpened weapons in 23, confiscated 139 weapons. The number of weapons in the jail is much greater than is expected in a correctional facility of its size. For example, in Miami-Dade, they've got an incarcerated population 1.5 times the size. They confiscated only 346 weapons in that location. Okay, so just take a look. 2,100 versus 346 for a jail that's much bigger. Here are some of the shivs that you can see that are being created. Looks like some creative stuff. That one's not good at all. Like that's going to do some serious damage there. Yeah, not good. So that's what's happening. Here you can see in August, they identified multiple areas with broken lights, found a bunch of broken fixtures. They began a repair blitz. They were trying to fix doors and things, but in 6 weeks, things are still damaged and lives are now being threatened. They can't lock the doors. People can break in. Drug use is very common. Significant amounts of drugs are trafficked into the jail. They uncovered 400 ecstasy pills, marijuana, Percocet, 10 cell phones, digital scale. They're selling stuff. During a site inspection, they found people high on fentanyl. Drug use in jail includes the use of strips, pieces of paper soaked in chemicals that are smoked for a narcotic effect, and they get into debt. There's a whole drug trade inside the jails. They also were burning holes in the windows. When we inspected the jail, window holes were visible from the parking lot. Security staff seemed to be aware of the issue, but still housed people in the cells with holes in the windows. All right, so like they burned holes and chiseled out holes in the windows, which not supposed to look like that. Corrupt staff are also a significant source of the contraband. Multiple staff members have been arrested for trafficking drugs. 4 private security officers working in the jail were arrested. We were told that people were not screened when they came in from certain locations, so they can bring in whatever they want. The jail doesn't identify or address any violence. The grievance coordinator admitted that most grievances raise safety concerns. One homicide victim, this guy got killed. He complained 13 times in August. These people are going to kill me. They didn't do anything and now he's dead. In 5 of these grievances, he reported experiencing violence from other people. Before he died, he reported that officers were trying to move him to a more dangerous location because he reported the officers for misconduct. They said, oh, okay, great. He explained that moving him was dangerous because he had issues with people on multiple floors. Didn't respond until a month later. Dude's dead. So grievances are not responded to. The jail has a poor process for reporting things and it just gets worse and worse. So it's a disaster. Here is a drain inside a padded cell, so water will not drain. Leaks in pipes are also problems. Here's what the toilets look like. Toilet and sink in a unit cell. So that's what the kind of conditions you're living in. Here's another one. Panels ripped off the walls. Exposed wires in the housing area. Rough. Poor parasite and pest control. Lice everywhere. 2 incarcerated people had active lice infestations. The barber cart moves around and they just clip. They don't actually even clean the trimmers. Cockroaches everywhere throughout the jail. They saw cockroaches in housing units. Many cases of bed bugs. Rodents everywhere, infesting everything. No chemical control. 90% of the people living there were significantly malnourished with obvious muscle wasting. Look at that. 90% of the people are dying in front of you, starving to death. It's horrific. Not providing adequate mental health or medical care, and the horrors just go on and on and on. But meanwhile, Fani Willis has won her re-election. The people of Georgia think she's doing a tremendous job, and she's promising what the future will look like will include prosecutions of the president. Here is her interview.
DA Fani Willis says some of the biggest accomplishments of her first term happened outside of the courtroom. Her team cleared a decade's worth of backlogged cases, 18 1,000 of them, some dating back to 2014. She started a pre-indictment diversion program that already has seen 300 people graduate with no jail time, and the DA's mentorship program is now working with 500 kids in 20 local schools.
I'm really proud of our first term.
You didn't explain in that little highlight reel all the dead people who have died in her jails.
In office, and I say we because it's definitely been a team effort. And the first thing that I did is amazing is I put together a team of dedicated professionals. I think the best in the business.
Like her lover,
and we can
Nathan
compete
Wade.
Anywhere in the country. And that was the first step.
She
to
paid him
making
$700,000.
The second thing that we did
and
that
slept with him a
is
ton.
just really
Probably during
helpful
office
to
hours,
the community
if I had to
and to the citizens is when we got here, there were more than 18,000 cases unindicted. Those cases went back from 2014 through 2020. We were able to clear up all of those cases.
How'd you do it?
Resolutions, either in indicting them or dismissing them.
Okay.
But certainly moving on with them.
Oh, great. So you dismissed a bunch of cases and you didn't take any action on them. You indicted a couple of them and you say you cleared 18,000. This is like if you go into your email inbox, if you have 18,000 emails in your inbox and you just click all of them and you delete them all, you just say, wow, I really did a great job on that. What'd you do today? I got through 20,000 emails. You did. Did you read any of them? No. So she dismissed a bunch of stuff and she'll celebrate it.
The thing that I am happiest about is our REACH program, where in our inaugural year, we went into 6 schools and we touched 150 children. We're now up to 20 schools and we have over 500 children that we're servicing. And it's an entire year program to keep people out of gangs and keep children, middle schoolers and high schools out of gangs, and just showing them anger management and resolutions that don't get you in the criminal justice system. And then probably the last big accomplishment is the diversion program. There was no pre-indictment diversion. We've now graduated more than 300 people. We've had 700 people enroll. And then let's talk about crime reduction. All of these strategies and our tough on crime, violent crime especially, have made crime go down. Violent crime is down more than 20%. So I'm extremely proud the first 4 years. But when I came here, I was on a 12-year plan. And so I continue to be on that 12-year plan. And we have really big plans for term 2.
Well, let's talk about it. What does the middle 4 years of this plan look like for you?
Well, the middle plan looks like some dreams come true. One of the things that I want to do is we want to have a family violence center. And what that is that's for domestic violence victims. I also want a domestic violence court because I need judges that are trained on how to deal with domestic violent victims. We know the reality is most DV victims go back 7 times because it's not.
Want to see if we get any Trump business
of gangs so that we can keep crime at a minimum here in Fulton County.
Yeah, well, let me kind of go right off of that. And one of the hallmark cases of your first term was the YSL RICO case. A lot of big developments in that since the last time we talked. Obviously,
your prosecutors embarrassed themselves and
took a plea deal.
The justice system.
You've been working so hard on this case. It took a long time to put together, and it's taken a long time to get to this point. Were you happy with the outcome? Do you think that Judge Whitaker made the right decision?
You know, it's funny. I think the public still needs an educational point on YSL.
Wow.
YSL was a RICO indictment with 28 defendants. At this point, 14 of those defendants have been disposed.
The people,
1 was
idiots,
dismissed,
dumb
and
people.
13 have taken pleas, which means they've taken responsibility for their crimes. But we still have 14 defendants that have to finish their justice, and so it limits what I can say about it. But what I can tell you is the approach of that indictment, the approach will stay the same as we enter into the second term.
But a few criminal cases dominated the headlines in her first 4 years, none more so than her prosecution of Donald Trump and some of his allies for election crimes in Georgia. The future of Trump's case becomes murkier after Trump's re-election. A Supreme Court ruling earlier this year made it tougher to prosecute presidents for things they do on the job. Willis indicated she still plans to pursue charges against Trump. The other big hallmark case obviously is still also ongoing, so tell me what you can about it. But, with the re-election of now President-elect Donald Trump, he was also at the center of the election indictment. What do you do now? Because we've got this Supreme Court precedent now that says presidents really can't be charged for some of the things that they did in office. With him now having the protection of the White House, how do you proceed as it relates to just his portion of this case?
I'm not going to talk to you about a case. Let me talk to you about a young lawyer and a lawyer that's got a little age on her. When I became a lawyer, I believe that all the smartest people were the judges, right? That's who rose to the top. I've been a little disheartened as I've gone on to practice law. But what I can tell you about me as a district attorney, I didn't indict anyone who I did not believe committed a crime in any case. And all of our more serious felony cases were indicted because a grand jury decided that there was enough evidence there to indict them. And so it is our plan, if someone has an indictment in this office, no matter who they they are, we continue to pursue those charges. I can't be responsible for what judges and what
churches you
will
speak
do.
at? What was that?
That will be decisions that they make. But I hope we get to see a little courage in leaders, and that young lawyer from 30 years ago will continue to believe in the judicial system, because we'll see courageous decisions.
And you mentioned no matter who it is. What about no matter how long it takes? Is that something that you think about?
I'm patient. That's what age teaches you, is patience. I've been patient in the way we do our work. And that goes back to those indictments we talked about when we first started. It was very frustrating, right? You want to get through this backlog, you want to do everything, but you cannot do the work at the risk of not looking at the facts, not looking at the evidence. And so we've patiently plowed through, and we will continue to patiently plow through to seek justice. And
a lot of plowing through going on in Fulton County.
I'm here for 8 more years is my plan. And so if that's what it takes for us to get justice in some cases, we come to work every day. We'll come to work and look for justice.
Some of the things that you mentioned, the diversion programs, the clearing out of these backlogged cases, you collected a very healthy amount of the vote tally when you were reelected. Did you view that as kind of a referendum from the taxpayers of Fulton County on
more
the job
noxious
that
odor
you did in your first term, and on what they hope for you to do in the second term?
Well, let's be honest. In the primary election, I won 87% of the vote. That's 90. And of course, that was only Democrats voting. But of course, that was a referendum. And then we live in a very diverse community, one that is 35% Republican, about 65% Democrat. And I won close to 69% of the vote. I think the community sees us. I think they see all of our community activities. I think they see our no-nonsense, tough approach on violent criminals. And I think it is a referendum that they want me to continue to do the work.
They do.
And that's exactly what me and the team that I've comprised.
They do. Fulton County has one thing in mind. They just want more Fani Willis. Noxious odor for them, even though Fani Willis has a bunch of black men, apparently, according to the DOJ, dropping dead in her jails. But the news will continue to salivate over her. Oh, she's doing a diversion program. Great job. People are dropping dead in her jails who are presumed innocent, who've never been convicted of anything. And they just reelected her. Our corrupt DOJ, of course, saved this one until after the election, publishing this one on November 14th after she won. And more dead people surely will show up in Georgia.